Hello, and welcome back to the Real American Podcast. As much a review of the original G.I. Joe TV series as it is a review of the accuracy of my childhood memories. I'm Jacques, and we're stepping into the fourth episode. Duel and the Devil's Cauldron. We're firmly in the back nine of the mass device quadrilogy. Cobra has developed a teleporter laser cannon, affectionately referred to as the mass device, which they've used to commandeer G.I. Joe's ultra-sophisticated satellite, the Relay Star, demoralize the people of France by taking the Eiffel Tower, transporting and capturing the entire Red Square army from the Soviet Union, kidnap all of the world's leaders, which they've enslaved with mind control headbands, and temporarily kidnap and enslave the field commander of G.I. Joe, Duke. G.I. Joe's only hope of combating Cobra's mass device is developing their own mass device, which runs on 3 catalytic elements that are in short supply. The last couple episodes, they've been collecting them from the frigid north and the bottom of the ocean, and they've got one more element to go. At the end of our last episode, Snake Eyes brought a canister of red crystal from Cobra's mining operation that turned out to be a bomb/knockout gas canister. The Joes are on the verge of being blown to smithereens when... All the Joes, with the exception of CoverGirl and the Wolf Timber, have been rendered unconscious by the knockout gas. This is a little weird because at the end of the last episode, Duke was the last one awake and then he collapsed. But now he's out and CoverGirl has regained consciousness. With the help of Timber, CoverGirl acquires a wet rag to combat the effects of the knockout gas. She collects the canister, which is apparently a fusion bomb, and makes her way to a nearby Jeep. She takes a page out of Duke's playbook and hits us with a big, fat, whopping burger full of exposition.
Good boy! Liquid can filter fumes! Maybe enough time to get Fusion Bomb out of here.
We then have this episode's Circle K glitch in the Matrix moment. As Timber is waiting patiently for CoverGirl to enter the Jeep, I realize that he is in fact already inside the Jeep. This can mean only one thing. While utilizing his time machine to return to San Dimas to ace his history report, Timber foolishly forgot to dial one number higher to reach the current day. Or they just didn't feel like erasing him from those frames. The canister Snake Eyes brought back from the Arctic is another example of Cobra having an overly elaborate booby trap. Snake Eyes found it in the cave, opened it, collected crystal, filled the canister, sealed it, carried it who knows how far through the Arctic, lost it in a snowdrift, had it collected by an old blind man, took it on an ice boat, flew it on a private jet, carried it into G.I. Joe headquarters, opened it, dumped the crystal out, and only then was the trap sprung. CoverGirl drives the bomb to the edge of G.I. Joe headquarters and does a short stop and launches it into the air, and it explodes harmlessly over the surrounding neighborhood. With the immediate crisis averted and only the smallest amount of ambient radiation filtering into the local water supply, Dr. Vandermeer theorizes that they may be able to activate their mass device with only 2 of the elements, provided his synthetic meteorite is capable of stable teleportation. They decide to test it on Gung Ho's favorite rifle. Vandermeer hands Snake Eyes one of the teleportation chips and teleports Gung Ho's weapon to him. Snake Eyes just got over severe radiation poisoning, and the next thing they do is try teleporting something using an experimental meteorite. This guy must have a fucking death wish. It doesn't work at all. It bends Gung Ho's weapon all to shit. It's a complete failure. The Joes now have no choice but to complete the 3rd leg of the fetch quest. They're heading to South America, to the Ring of Fire, where they will find the volcano, the Devil's Cauldron, which contains the meteorite they need. According to Vandermeer, it fell to Earth 100,000 years ago and slam-dunked right into the volcano. Before anyone can question Vandermeer about the fact that the Ring of Fire is in fact not located in South America at all, an ultra-secret message comes across the video scrambler. It's Stalker with information from the President and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. They have instructed G.I. Joe to surrender to the forces of Cobra immediately. Encryption technology had much to be desired in the year 1983. The ultra-secret scrambler looked more like baby's first puzzle. Scooby-Dooby, yabba-dabba, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. While enjoying a banquet of mostly turkey legs, Cobra Commander and Destro discuss the fact that G.I. Joe will soon be surrendering to them. I couldn't help noticing there's a giant bite out of Cobra Commander's turkey leg. It made me wonder, does he remove the mask every time he takes a bite? Or does the lower portion lift up like Darth helmets? Or does he just kind of jam the lower half of the turkey leg underneath the bottom edge of the mask and get as much of it into his mouth as he can? I do remember from G.I. Joe the movie that his face is super gross looking, and it's got to be pretty lame to eat dinner with him no matter who you are. Cobra Commander gets overly excited about their impending victory and smashes the plate holding the majority of their food, getting shards of glass in the entirety of their lunch. This prompts Destro to head out on a gold dust hunt, seeing as how all of the food will cut the inside of his esophagus. With all his friends gone and no lunch left to eat, Cobra Commander decides to amuse himself by pitting Giant Conan against a really sweet-looking Cobra robot. I was totally excited to see this fight, but instead they cut to Selena whining about how Duke isn't there yet, and I guess they'll show the rest of this fight after the commercial break? We then cut to the G.I. Joe TV studios, where it's revealed that the impending surrender is nothing more than a clever ruse. All the footage of vehicles and infantry was created using nothing more than models and camera tricks. I'm beginning to wonder about the level of visibility both Cobra Commander and Destro have through their collective masks. There is no way that the special effects technology of 1983 will fool anyone into thinking a model is a full-size vehicle. It's 2017, and even computer-generated images suffer from a lack of believability. And speaking of unbelievability, Stalker begins to doubt his acting prowess's capability to convince Cobra of G.I. Joe's surrender. He cites his only acting experience as playing a pumpkin in his school's Thanksgiving play.
I hope I was as convincing as these models. My only previous acting experience was playing a pumpkin in the school Thanksgiving show.
I wonder whose idea it was to leave this juicy morsel of dialogue in instead of showing Conan's awesome robot fight. The scene ends with an incredibly abrupt cut to the next locale. This should be unforgivable on such a well-produced cartoon like G.I. Joe. We then find ourselves at the Devil's Cauldron, the volcano containing the radioactive meteorite. The Joes are poised to lift the rock with 3 Tomahawk helicopters. The meteorite has been floating around in this volcano for the last 100,000 years, which would mean that it would need to have a melting point well above the upper temperatures that a volcano can produce. This volcano appears to have mostly orange lava in it, which has a temperature of 1600 degrees Fahrenheit. I decided to compare the meteorite to steel, which has a melting point of 2,750 degrees Fahrenheit. All of this would be fine, except for the density of lava is about 3 times that of water, making it the same as like a giant vat of Crisco. The meteorite is roughly 15 cubic feet, which would make it 7,397 pounds. Something that heavy sitting on top of a vat of Crisco for 100,000 years would sink pretty rapidly. It would end up at the center of the Earth within a matter of days, I would assume. It would be inaccessible to G.I. Joe or Cobra. Perhaps the meteor's radioactive properties allow it to defy the laws of physics. While the Joes are lowering magnets down to retrieve the rock, we get our first dose of the helicopter pilot Wild Bill, who is totally awesome.
Yee-haw! This is Wilder and a Bronco with a cactus saddle. My old daddy taught me how to dip a net to catch a mess of blue crabs. This is about the same, except this old crab weighs about 10 tons.
It It appears as though the Joes are going to succeed in retrieving the meteorite, and Gung Ho decides to celebrate by copping a feel off of Scarlet's tits. She catches his hand at the last possible second, and her only response to the assault is blushing briefly. If you don't believe me, watch the episode. It's totally in there. I have no idea what this is doing in a children's cartoon. To thankfully break up this incredibly awkward moment, Destro shows up with an entire squadron of Cobra Rattler jets. He instructs his forces to shoot the cables holding the meteorite instead of attacking the immobilized G.I. Joe helicopters. Super stupid. The meteorite falls back within the volcano, and Destro orders all of his forces to shoot the side of the volcano to trigger an eruption and launch the meteorite up like a champagne cork. Yet again, this radioactive rock continues to defy the laws of physics.
We have only one target, and that is the volcano itself. Concentrate your fire at this level, just below the surface of the lava in the crater. When we break through, the lava spill will trigger an eruption. An eruption which will pop the meteorite into the sky like a champagne cork.
Back at Cobra headquarters, we see the aftermath of the battle between Fake Conan and Cobra Commander's Robot Gladiator. It looked like this fight was super dope, and I wish we had gotten to see it. Fake Conan is unconscious and is being carried out, and the robot is in complete ruins. Cobra Commander's having a bit of a panic attack over the fact that G.I. Joe has not completely surrendered and is trying to raise Destro on his communicator to complain. Stalker attempts to stall for time, saying it'll take another hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, to collect all of G.I. Joe's forces. Cobra Commander's not having it, and he decides that this is the moment he's going to destroy all of New York. He scrounges through Destro's possessions to get enough crumbs of meteorite to destroy the city. He launches a beam through the Joe's Relay Star satellite, and it's heading toward the city of New York, and there's an awesome crowd reaction of people realizing that this is going to be the end of the world.
It's headed right for us.
This is the end!
It's curtains.
Oh no!
The end of the world!
At the last second, the slave girl Selena dumps a jug of water on Cobra's mass device, and the beam just blips out and stops heading toward New York at the last second. That doesn't make that much sense to me. It seems like the beam is more like a bullet coming out of a gun, and once it's been shot, if you knock the gun out of someone's hand, it doesn't change the trajectory of the bullet. But I guess this is another example of the gold meteorite breaking the laws of physics. Selena is sent to Cobra's dungeon with a promise of paying for her interloping, and Cobra Commander realizes that he must now depend on Destro to complete Cobra's plan. He also fires off a pretty obnoxious letter S.
Unless he brings back the meteorite, our mass device will be useless!
Back at the volcano, Cobra's forces are still trying to cause an eruption by shooting the side of the mountain. The G.I. Joes smartly decide to shoot down Cobra's jets in an attempt to stop the plan. They miss like the Batwing trying to gun down the Joker. One of the Joes' helicopters is shot down, and we see our first parachute pop out. I remember seeing every air battle littered with parachutes, but this is the first one. The pilot floats safely out of frame. Appearing out of the distance is what can only be described as Cobra's helicarrier. It has a giant net on the front, which they're going to attempt to catch the meteorite in. Why wouldn't they just try and catch the meteor on the deck of the helicarrier? It's way bigger and would be way easier. This net makes no sense. The meteorite can't get hot enough to melt through the deck of the aircraft. The only thing I can come up with is Cobra Commander doesn't want to pay to repair any burn damage? The volcano erupts and sends the meteorite sky high, where Cobra is about to catch it, and G.I. Joe swoops in with 2 jets with a net of their own and attempts to catch the meteorite. The meteorite is too heavy or too hot and burns through their net and falls into Cobra's net. This is one of many moments in the episode that they could have cut out and instead shown us the awesome robot fight. It occurred to me that the G.I. Joe who floated out of frame died a horrible death being burned alive by hot lava. He fell right by the base of the volcano, which is erupting pretty violently. So we have our first non-Cobra death. The Joes then fly in with jetpacks and assault the helicarrier. Scarlet avenges her dead G.I. Joe compatriot by using an explosive arrow to destroy 2 pieces of artillery on the deck. One Cobra Trooper falls safely to the left of the explosion, where the other one appears to be engulfed in flames, so we have our first on-camera death. There was a distinct difference between the gunfire sounds from G.I. Joe and Cobra. It sounded like G.I. Joe was using traditional gunpowder-based weapons, whereas Cobra was utilizing laser guns. I don't know if this was just to help kids differentiate between the two sides, or if Cobra is really supposed to have access to a higher level of technology than G.I. Joe. Here, have a listen. Snake Eyes is flying in on his jetpack from his helicopter, and the wolf Timber, not to be left behind, jumps out of the helicopter into his hands. This wolf is incredibly well trained for having almost no time with Snake Eyes. I can only assume that he trained the dog on the long plane ride from the Arctic back to America. They hit the deck, and Snake Eyes takes out a few bad guys and is about to be ambushed by one that he doesn't see when he's saved by Timber, who lands on top of a Cobra Trooper. Although they don't show it, it's pretty obvious that Timber tears the trooper's throat out like a dire wolf from Game of Thrones. I don't want to make too big of a deal out of this, but out of the about 100 people that are shooting and fighting on the deck of this ship, nobody hits anybody. They are the worst shots. You would think that someone would get shot by accident in a battle of this size. Cobra's forces, with the exception of Destro, are defeated and locked within a force field. Scarlet is caught off guard by Destro and attempts to use the incredibly effective self-defense technique of the foot stomp to escape, but amazingly that doesn't work. During the struggle, she discharges what is described as a thermal arrow, which implies to me that she was planning on burning Destro alive within his armor. Destro uses her as a human shield to board what looks like a Quinjet to make his escape. Duke and Gung Ho are unwilling to shoot through Scarlet to get at Destro, even though he will escape with a chunk of the radioactive meteorite, which could give him the potential to kill millions or perhaps even billions of people.
The steel-skulled bump's got the meteorite and Scarlet, and there's not a thing we can do about it.
For the moment, no, there isn't.
Gung Ho laments the fact that there's nothing they can do to stop Destro from escaping with the meteorite and Scarlet. Duke agrees, despite the fact that they have 2 Sky Striker jets just flying around over the helicarrier that could easily follow him, and a whole crew of helicopters that could try and shoot him down, but I guess that's not G.I. Joe's way of handling business. Aboard Destro's Quinjet, Scarlet has been chained to the wall, and Destro is gloating about the fact that soon she'll be a mindless slave. For an unknown reason, he leaves her crossbow within arm's reach, and she manages to fire an explosive arrow which fuses the jet's controls, sending it hurtling toward the mountainside. It's unclear how the crossbow became reloaded between being discharged with the thermal arrow and Scarlet getting chained up against the wall. This ending to the episode is pretty dramatic, but it's spoiled immediately by the recap of the next episode, letting us know that both Scarlet and Destro are completely fine. As far as my final thoughts, I've decided to implement a rating system, letting us know whether the battle is half full or half empty. I would say that the first 3 episodes of the show were definitely half full. I enjoyed all of them, and they made enough sense to keep my interest. This episode, unfortunately, I am going to have to give a half empty rating due to the lack of robot fight and insane physics relating to the meteorite and volcano, and the battle of G.I. Joe's nets versus Cobra's nets. It was a little too much for me. I'm pretty excited to move on to the 5th part of this mini-series, ending out the Mass Device saga. But first, I'm going to give you my Knowing is Half the Battle segment, where I let you know about a piece of media that I'm excited about. Something you should know about is the Old School Wrestling Review Video Podcast. If you're a fan of 1980s pro wrestling, you will love these guys. They chronologically critique the entire Hulkamania pay-per-view library and beyond. You can find them at oswreview.com. If there's something you think I should know about, send it my way. I love new media, and hopefully this is a way to crowdsource cool shit. If you like the show, please let me know by subscribing or leaving some comments or a review. And other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Yo, Joe.
Thank you.